Hi, this is Dave Hodges of the Common Sense Show, where we are freeing America one enslaved mind at a time. We are brought to you by Numana Foods. Check us out. Go to our website at numana.com/Hodges. And right now we've got a 5% sale through the holidays. Take 5% off your purchase price by putting in the coupon code Hodges, NOV5. The very best in storable foods at Numana, numana.com/Hodges. Well, this is an emergency broadcast of the Common Sense Show. And we've done this before with Paul Martin, who's our guest, and more has surfaced. And Paul caught my attention earlier today when he was talking about some discoveries he made with regard to what's going on in Wyoming. And I have my own fact checking that I've done with locals in Wyoming. So we're going to be comparing notes here. And we did a special about, 7-8 days ago called Chaos in Colorado. Well, that chaos is now spread to Wyoming. Paul, welcome to the show, and let's get right down to it. What's on your mind?
Hi, Dave. Well, I had made a purchase from a gentleman on Craigslist for something that I needed, and so I went to meet him and pick up the merchandise, and we got talking, and come to find out the guy's not only a prepper, he's a super prepper, very aware. It's like talking to you and me. I mean, he doesn't have what you and I have, but he's very aware. So we're having a conversation and talking about the website and what I do and all that. And then he drops this on me. I call these freebies, and he says, "Well, I've got a friend at the Air Force Base in Cheyenne at Warren." And he said, "Guess what they've been doing all summer?" And I said, "Well, I don't know." And he goes, "They've been preparing for urban combat." And I go, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah." He said they've got their own little town up there, and they've been practicing with the Humvees, with the 50s mounted, no ammo in them and everything. Mm-hmm. But the freaky thing that he said, "My friend's MOS is not in combat."
Paul, define MOS for the listening audience that may not know what you're talking about.
Oh, that's a military occupations specialty. And like in Marine Corps, my MOS was 1811. I was in tanks. And so what they're doing is they are cross-training people that don't have a combat type mindset. So they're re-engineering some of their people up there to be able to take on something in urban warfare. One of the broadcasts we did was talking about my military source talking about going to the training for the Army bases on the West Coast. Well, now we've got it in the Air Force. So that was a freebie.
That is amazing. So you got a freebie there in Wyoming. What do you make of this? I mean, Paul, when you connect the dots of what you already know to be true and what is happening in Wyoming from what you just learned, what does this mean to you?
Well, there's going to be an event. I mean, we've talked about this ad infinitum. And another thing his friend told him, they went out and had a beer, and he was explaining all this stuff to him. And towards the end of it, he said, "This is going to happen." So for somebody to make a statement like that, I would imagine that would probably be an officer, probably captain or above, maybe a major. He didn't say, but just having been in the military, that's not rank and file enlisted stuff. Well, unless you're an E7, E8, E9. But when you've got what we've learned about the U.S. Army in the western United States, now we've got the Air Force involved. And I know a lot of these guys. I mean, a lot of them live in my area. I'm not very far from Cheyenne. A lot of them live here in northern Colorado. And so they're preparing for an event. And it could be literally anything. I mean, we look what's going on in Turkey. We look what's going on, again, in Germany with the terrorism over there. One of my better sources is a retired high-ranking military officer. He's a contractor now for the Army. And, it was 7 or 8 weeks ago. He said, we were talking about ISIS, and he said they're like pennies. They're everywhere. So the what could happen is, I mean, is a 1 hour radio show.
Well, this is really interesting to me because I've been following the goings on in Wyoming for quite some time, and a lot of what I've been following has been fueled by what average people, in the populace have been sending to me. And a lot of this stuff starts to fit together, form a pattern. So it's not like I'm getting isolated, information from Jill and Bob while I'm getting something from Steve that's entirely different. What I'm getting is highly consistent material. But let me go back before I delve into my end of it and we connect your dots with my dots. Let's go back and let's talk about what could possibly be underlying this or preparing for urban warfare. Well, wait a minute now. Trump has won the election. It's now smooth sailing unless there's an assassination, nuclear war, whatever. But Trump is headed to the White House. All my doubts, all my fears about how they could derail his election are now over. Now, I do believe that January 6th, when the House of Representatives meets, Paul, to basically rubber stamp the Electoral College, that's what it'll be. It'll be a rubber stamp, and Trump will be the 45th President of the United States. Why are they practicing for urban warfare when we have a popularly elected president assuming power? Can you help me understand this?
Well, I mean, we talked about it in a previous podcast. Not only did he turn over the apple cart, he squashed all the apples, and then he chopped up the apple cart. He's taken on the New World Order, the global elite, whatever you want to call them, and turned them upside down and threw them out into the trash bin. He's done it with the corporate media. They're done. The Democrats are done. They'll be decades getting over this. They are completely obliterated. So the dark side has been completely torched. And they're not just going to walk in, sing Kumbaya and go sit around a campfire and roast marshmallows and hot dogs and say, boy, wow, we really got beat, didn't we? They've been at this economically for 300 years. For psychologically, they've been at it for 600 years.
Yeah.
They're not going to walk off.
That is interesting. I'm all I can say is I'm speechless because this so ties in to what I know to be true in Wyoming. And Paul, are you familiar at all? Do you have any recollection of what I've already written about what's going on in Wyoming?
Vaguely.
Yeah,
we
cover a lot.
Kind of
I understand. We need to get down to this. Anyway, I got an email sometime back, and I published some pictures, and let me just read this to you. Hey, Dave. Thank you so very much for your vigilant pursuit of the truth and to get to the information out to all of us. God bless you for that. I was just giving you some FYI here in Wheatland, Wyoming. And I have a lady who follows the show quite intently named Jill, and she and her husband send stuff to me constantly. And some of the stuff she sends is really, really good. This woman missed her calling. She should have been an investigative reporter. She said, we've seen a huge amount of what looks like military caravans in the area. Now, this is last spring, I believe. I'd have to go back and redate the article here. Let me see if I can get a timestamp on this. No, I don't have the timestamp. Anyway, she sent this out, and she went on to say that we see that trucks are out there near Laramie, out on the countryside, Wyoming, on a back road, and they coincided or met up with a possible 75 to 100 vehicles of some sort in convoys. And it says also saw this truck with AIMS on it. AIMS stands for Armed Mobile Emergency and Safety. Now, I actually reported on this before, Paul, and I got the nastiest letter from AIMS. Oh, don't you ever report that again or we'll sue you, blah, blah. Hey, sue me, guys, because when you go out in public, you have no expectation of privacy. We didn't accuse you of doing anything wrong. We simply reported what witnesses saw your people doing, which was engaging in military maneuvers. So we knew that some really high-level stuff we think was going on there, but then we also get into what's going on in Rawlins, Wyoming. How familiar are you with that weird, weird community?
It's, there's legions of stories here in northern Colorado about Rawlins, especially with the drug trade and law enforcement, a lot of stuff. I won't go into that. But, I haven't been to Rawlins in probably 7 years.
You don't want to go there.
No, I don't.
I have published something, and I'd have to run this down, but I published something on Rawlins some time back, and I don't know if you recollect that or not. But I got into what some of the locals were telling me, and these locals were scared out of their mind. They don't go out at night. Some of these people that wrote to me said the witchcraft rules the city, and it's not safe to go out. And they have the old territorial prison in Rawlins. In fact, actually, I had a 7th grade language arts teacher who was from Rawlins, and she used to tell us about the prison and the town and how weird the town was, and she was so glad to be in the Denver area where I grew up. And never did I think that I would ever come full circle with this, Paul. Rawlins is, shall we say, a Hillary Clinton paradise, where she'd be fully welcome being a 4th-degree coven witch. And not all the people in Rawlins are this way, but I mean, this extends into their social and political institutions, their local schools. This is what the locals have told me. People in Rawlins, don't get mad at me. This is what your neighbors are saying about your own town. And they do believe that the Rawlins Territorial Prison is secretly being transformed into a FEMA camp type of facility. And I have reported on this before. So we have legions of information coming out of Wyoming. Surveillance devices being put up on highways, also being installed on top of Walmarts in Cheyenne and Laramie. I've heard it all, Paul. It's just the reports I have number probably somewhere between 70 to 80 on-the-ground reports from people in Rawlins, Wyoming. Pretty interesting. And then you're coming at me with this story, telling me they're preparing for urban warfare in Wyoming, I'm assuming to be used along the Front Range, which would be, Laramie to Pueblo. Any other guesses here about what we're looking at, what's going to happen? Any thoughts? Paul?
It's a bigger picture. A year ago, a young lady in the U.S. Army uniform walked in.
Paul, you need to reorient. Paul,
where are you stationed?
Paul, we're losing your signal a little bit. Can you reorient? Let's try it again. Paul, can you hear me? Hello, Paul?
Yeah, how are we doing?
Okay, we had a little blank spot there. Should I be surprised this is happening?
Are we okay?
We're okay. Listen, I was interviewing Mike Adams last week, and in the middle of an interview, in the same format that you and I are speaking tonight, we had a voice come on, a woman's voice. Now, Mike couldn't hear it, but it was so loud I couldn't understand what he was saying. And I don't know what the source was, where it came from, and it came through on the broadcast. I had lots of people write to me and say, yeah, Dave, I heard it even though Mike didn't. And
yeah, I heard it too.
Yeah, so we're kind of getting the same kind of interference right now where about every other word you were saying was gone, but it wasn't a garbled gone, it was a cut out gone. Anyway, we seem to have you back, but I want to see if we can connect dots between what I just told you and what you told me. What is going on? What can we expect to see? What does this mean to Paul Martin?
Well, militarily, this is an operation. The military trains, then we pre-position, and then we launch. And this has been going on for 5 years. But, I think that Brandon Smith that has altmarket.com
Yes.
wrote a piece several weeks before the the election, and he stated emphatically let him, and they were going to let the economy collapse under him. I mean, we've seen bank glitches all over the Western banking system. You know, Royal Bank of Scotland's down, NatWest is down, this bank's down, that bank's down. People can't get their funds and stuff. Now we've got the war on cash in India, Venezuela now, and I mean the economic ramifications of the Western banking empire and spreading to South America and India is for me pretty alarming.
I would agree, but on a micro level, right here in the United States, Paul, what's greeting Trump is inexcusable, and I'm talking specifically about the Federal Reserve and what they're doing. They just raised interest rates. Now, had Hillary Clinton been elected, they never would have done this, because this guarantees that the housing market that was staged for a recovery, and this is what everyone wrote about. In fact, actually, in the area where I live, in the Phoenix metropolitan area, Phoenix was supposed to be the hottest real estate market for next year. No more, thanks to the Federal Reserve rate increase, and they say they're coming back with another one. They're trying to bury the economy before Trump can take over, so he takes the blame among the ignorant who don't understand that he's been prepositioned to be set up. And I totally agree with you. And, you know, to connect the dot there, Paul, the Federal Reserve is owned by people who are into the free trade agreements. They're the manufacturers of the free trade agreements, and they're behind illegal immigration, which drives down wage structure in this country. And this is why they're doing what they're doing, because Trump is antithetical to what they want to do. And I was go ahead, Paul.
If they raise another rate hike before he's sworn in, that will take care of his economic platform. Period.
Exactly. There will be no money for infrastructure. This will cost. Now, by the way, what's fueling the stock market right now? We've seen an 8% increase in the stock market. It almost hit 2,000. And what's fueling that is the fact that the economy is anticipating the infrastructure hit that they're going to take, and it's a good hit. But if their interest rates go up and Trump can't find the funds to invest in the country, then there's going to be no infrastructure. Then we're going to see a recession in the stock market, and it's going to have a cascading effect through the rest of the economy. You know, Paul, what I've said, and I called for this in an earlier podcast I did, an individual podcast, I said time for Trump to get into office and take down the Federal Reserve, and I mean obliterate it. It's an act of Congress. Take it down and replace it with Congress shall coin money, which is what the Constitution says, interest-free money. Of course, the last president that tried that got a bullet in the brain, and I'm talking about JFK and his silver certificates.
Oh, absolutely. But if you look at really what's going on in the markets right now, I mean, with the market rising like this, you know what's happening? The insiders are selling like crazy.
How will that affect Trump when he takes office?
Well, the corporate leader expecting an implosion. They're making hay while the sun shines, baby. They are selling like crazy.
Yeah, they are.
They know what's going to happen.
So you think this is the bubble before the crash, is what you're telling me?
Well, this is an illusion before the crash.
Okay. Semantics,
yeah.
But I think we're talking the same thing.
Yeah.
I really do. So then we're back to square one. Why would the troops have to be readied for urban warfare? Well, if you're dealing with a collapsed economy and people are going house to house to get the resources they've not prepared for, then that would make perfect sense. That would make absolute perfect sense.
And militarily, we don't have the people to do that.
Oh, yeah, I know what you're saying.
You know,
go ahead and say it, Paul. Say it. We don't have the people to do it, so who's going to be doing it?
The foreign troops are already here, and they don't have enough of them. But the kicker is they do have, especially with the Spetsnaz, they have the teams out there that 7 men can take down Denver. Another 7 men can take down Houston. Another 7 men can take down Dallas-Fort Worth. Another 7 can take down Miami. another 7 could take down New York. I mean, with the people don't realize about the fuel oil supplies comes into one place in New York City. One place. You blow that up, New York City has no fuel oil, none, zero. My ex-father-in-law was with Mid-America Pipeline, and he was actually hired to go. They had a computer problem in New York City with their fueling system where all the oil comes in at one spot, and the best that they had been working on it for 2 weeks and couldn't fix it, and my ex-father-in-law was a genius, fixed it in 15 minutes. But all the oil that comes into New York City comes in at one spot. It doesn't take much to blow up a bunch of refineries in Houston. And as my retired military source says, when we were talking about ISIS, he says, look, they're like pennies, they're everywhere.
Yeah.
We've got Spetsnaz all over the place. I mean, we are ripe to be taken down.
It's interesting. Let me read to you about these Ames vehicles that I did some research on that were photographed by Jill from Wheatland, Wyoming. It says, for years, Ames has been the glue that would tie together several first responder agencies, intelligence operations, and on-scene military. They have been used at critical shooting events. However, in recent years, my source tells me that they have been involved with coordinated drills with foreign troops in high-profile activities such as Jade Helm 15 and now UX 16. This is also happening in conjunction with the presence of foreign mercenaries in nearby northern Colorado. And when I wrote those words, Paul, I referenced you here and talking to me about the Gurkhas that were anti-guerrilla warfare troops that are in your particular area near LaPorte, Colorado, which is not far from the Wyoming state line with Colorado. So when I wrote this before, Ames had a conniption fit, and I can't stress to you. And what these morons don't realize is the fact that when you go out into public with your truck, you're going to get photographed. There ain't a damn thing you can do about it because you have no expectation of privacy when you leave your private area. And guess what is going to show up on the Common Sense Show in a very detailed report in the near future? I'm going to resurface this Ames thing, the Gurkhas, your story, and we're going to let the people out there connect the dots from the good on-the-ground reporting that you're doing and that other people like Jill from Wheatland, Wyoming, and others like her are sending me on a constant basis. And it looks like where we talked about chaos in Colorado, that chaos has spread to Wyoming, Paul, and we're soon going to feel the wrath of foreign soldiers trying to police us in a collapsed economy. Is that your conclusion as it is mine?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it really is.
The whole underpinnings of the economy, it's sitting on a hay bale. All somebody's got to do is like one match. I mean, if you look at the derivatives with Deutsche Bank at 700.
Paul, you're fading out again.
Long time, and the whole thing goes. One guy, I can do it. Can you hear me?
No, you were fading out there. Can you say that again?
Can you hear me, Dave?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. I said, you've got $714 trillion in Deutsche Bank. All you've got to have is one trader hit the wrong button at the wrong time. The whole Western economy is sitting on a hay bale. All somebody's got to do is flick a match.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Paul, let me go back, and I'm going to flip this out here, too. And people say, well, Dave, we want to see some proof. Okay, well, you're getting proof, and I'll tell you, you're going to get more proof in print in the next day or two. But this was something Katie, my former health reporter, was sent from someone she knew in Rawlins who was scared out of their mind and was absolutely insistent that nothing identifiable could ever be linked back to this person. Remember I said, Paul, earlier in this broadcast, the people who send me stuff from Rawlins are scared to death of reprisal. Anyway, this was sent to Katie on Wednesday, May 11th of this year, and it says, look what came to our town. And this person went on to say, this military convoy was here 2016 Wednesday today at our fairgrounds in Rollins. This is only the beginning of the convoy. There's more, and throughout the whole day, we have been swamped with military convoys coming in, and we don't even have a military base. And then they went on and they sent Katie, who forwarded this on to me. It said to all employees and contractors, and this was a notice that was publicly posted in Rollins. It said, emergency response exercise, April 22nd, 2016, Carbon County, Rollins, Sinclair, Wyoming. This is just a drill. There should be no reason for panic. And this is, by the way, the same time frame that I was getting the Ames vehicles pictures from Jill and so forth. On April 22nd, an emergency response exercise will be carried out by Carbon County first responders, Sinclair, Wyoming Refining Company Emergency Response Team. Refining Company? I did some tracing on that. Can you say Dick Cheney? Yeah, you heard me. And by the way, this came from the Office of Homeland Security, Memorial Hospital of Carbon County. So they're practicing for mass casualties, life flight, the transfer of mass casualties, the Wyoming National Guard, Union Pacific Railroad, who are they going to be shipping on those cars, and the Laramie Police Department. And they go on to say, and I'm quoting from this document, this is not Dave Hodges just spewing, this is right from the document at Rollins on this drill. This will be a full-scale joint exercise, SWAT team response drill playing a significant role in exercise and command center. The exercise will be hazardous material with the main event in the town of Sinclair, which is near Rollins. The public will be seeing the presence of National Guard, first responders, blah, 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 blah. There will be 2 mock incidents, one in Sinclair, the other in Rollins, and then an asterisk. It says, we want you to be aware this is an exercise only. If this were an incident within Sinclair refining, this exercise would notify contractors, and this would be disseminated to the public. And it goes on to say, supervisors, please copy and post this notice, and please forward this information to our contractors. Isn't that interesting, Paul, that we go back now 8 months and they had a drill like this in the middle of Nowheresville? Isn't that interesting?
It's very interesting. Yeah, I've driven past that refinery at Sinclair, and you got refineries in Commerce City.
Yeah, you do.
I used to blow stuff up.
Yeah, well, Paul, you're continuing to fade out here. I want to give this one more chance because I think we've got the bulk of our reporting done here. Any concluding comments?
Well, I think everybody needs to prepare for an event. The military's preparing for it. The government's preparing for it. We've got the most dangerous president-elect that probably the world's ever seen against the New World Order, and they're just not going to walk off and sing Kumbaya. They're not going to do it.
So what you're saying here, if I'm hearing you correctly, and I've had enough conversations that I think I'm pretty good at interpreting what you're saying, but I think what you're saying here, Paul, is they're practicing to create total chaos as Trump assumes office.
Oh, I think all the things are in places.
Okay. I happen to agree with you. I've said all along, these people will never accept the election results, and the military is being used. Now, at what point, and I'm sorry, I know we were headed for a conclusion, but the more we dig, the more we see. It seems to me that when Trump takes office on January 20th, he's the commander-in-chief. Can't he step in and tell the military, you will stand down? And can't he remove these foreign troops from our soil? Paul, what's your opinion on that?
Absolutely he can. But if it's so bad, if it's chaos, if it's Mad Max time, which is it's so easy to do right now, Dave, in this country, it could overwhelm the administration.
I hate to say it, but I can see your point, and I think you're probably correct. And I'll tell you another thing too, and I think it was Paul Craig Roberts that said this, and if it's not, I apologize to Paul, but I think this was what he said, that the corruption is so endemic inside the government and the stink is beginning to permeate through the military because of the Obama influence, that it may be beyond Trump's immediate ability to rectify disloyalty and treason within his own ranks. Do you first of all, I don't know if you know the source of that comment. I read it 3 or 4 days ago. I happen to agree with it. What's your thought on it, Paul?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the deep state's not going to go away. I mean, what better for the New World Order to completely trash, and I mean Mad Max trash, the Donald J. Trump administration. It's perfect. It's just absolute. It's perfect.
And if Trump moves to stop this, that could be the trigger for civil war in my book too.
Well, I think they're already planning on it. Literally. I mean, we have no idea what George Soros has got set up. It's the dynamics of all of the things that have been going on in this country for the last 4 years, militarily, troop movements, UN vehicles in this country. We've got ISIS everywhere, from one of my best sources. This thing could light up in an hour.
Yeah,
all they got to do is send out the message on a text phone. It's green, it's a go, and they could light up everything.
Yeah, you've said this. I'm going to repeat a couple statements you've made a number of times in our time together in our interviews, Paul. You've said a couple of things I thought were very revealing. When this starts, where you're at is where you'll stay. And I remember also you one time made the comment, or more than once, I think you said, that you could go to bed one night and wake up the next morning in a different world. And I think this is clearly what we're looking at.
Oh, shock and awe. Absolutely shock and awe. I mean, we've got Russian troops in Steve Quayle's area. We've got them in Appalachia. You've got stories on that. I've got them all over up here. We've seen Chinese down on the New Mexico border. We got Gurkhas. We got Mongolians. We've got Turkish army up here with barcodes on their necks. I mean, and there's no telling what's going on in the rest of the country. But with, my talk with my new friend today about what's going on up in Wyoming with the Air Force, and the Air Force is not those guys, I know them. I talk to them all the time. They're not combat guys. But the fact that they're cross-training these guys in Humvees and 50s and stuff, they're not doing that just because they don't have anything else to do.
Well, this is just an extension of Jade Helm 15 from your description. And we do know at places like Camp Grayling, which is a known FEMA camp in waiting, that the Danes and the Poles and other foreign troops trained with the Army Reserve units in Michigan and also the National Guard units. I received emails from participants and participants' families on this, and they were practicing to subjugate the American people in much the way you're describing here. And the dates on these communications I had from that particular area go all the way back to June of 2015. So we're looking at a 1.5 year separation now. And so this is not a new development. This is something that has been anticipated, which tells me this is pre-Donald Trump, and this is more like economy's going down, and we know it's going to happen, and we've known it for a long time. And this is what they're preparing to do. And Paul, let me just lay this out for the listening audience here. If we allow this to happen, if the economy goes south and it's devastating, when order is finally restored, we will not have a constitution. We will not be a republic. We will be a dictatorial regime under international control. And you can take that to the bank.
Well, good luck with that, because there's enough ammo and guns in this country to do some severe damage.
I would agree. I
But
would agree. And that's where the biochemical option comes in for the other side. And I'm going to tell this story again briefly. My former FEMA contact, and I've had this verified 9 times Sunday, as has Doug Hagman through his source, Rosebud. But if they can't get the country the way they want it, and this goes back 4 years with a very good friend of mine who's now bugged out and in hiding with like-minded people from the same agencies, FEMA and DHS, and they told me very clearly that this other side, the New World Order, can't get this country the way they want. They'll spread massive death through biochemical weapons.
well, my East Coast said it 2 years ago. He said bioweapons are going to be the weapon of choice they're going to use on us.
Yeah, he must have anticipated the stiff resistance, and I agree. And Yamamoto's notion that there'll be an American behind every blade of grass with a gun, I agree with that. I totally agree that what you're saying here, Paul, is that there will be resistance. But I'm also saying there's going to be a counter-resistance. And that counter-resistance could be awful deadly. And see, but here's the thing they weren't counting on with these plans. When my FEMA friend left 4 years ago, in fact, it was 4 years ago this week that he left. When he left, he didn't know about Donald J. Trump. He didn't think about the presidency. He didn't think that we're going to have a new commander-in-chief. And see, to me, this is a real wild card that plays heavily on the side of the people.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. I mean, but just from doing this since 1993, they have too many weapons against the American people in so many venues. It's another 2-hour radio show.
It could be a whole series.
Oh, absolutely. But, the end game is people need to prepare. They need to have water. They need to have pharmaceuticals. The credit markets, as I've said several times, are being held together with baling wire and bubble gum. And once those credit marks break, the transportation stops.
That one final thought here, Paul. The one thing that really dovetails with what we're talking about right now is what you reported earlier to this audience when you talked about people like Ed Petrowski, prominent farmer and farm figure in Kansas, and other people who have said just the mere defection of farmers because of adverse conditions created by the Obama administration is going to lead to not just a food shortage, but I believe you used the word famine. And
absolutely.
And what this talks about is the foreign troops are going to be able to use food against the American people. Food is a weapon.
Has been for 6,000 years.
No shortage. I guess right now what we're going to say is we're in a slight holding pattern. But Paul, does your instincts work like mine do, where I think this is going to greet Trump, not result after Trump takes over? I mean, what's your feeling? Is this pre-inauguration or post-inauguration?
I mean, with what they're doing with the Russians right now, I mean, we're in no man's land. We can't figure any of this out.
That's true.
It could be pre, it could be post, but the economy's done. The Western banking empire's done. The dollar's done. This ramp to 20,000 on the stock market. The insiders are selling like crazy.
Right.
But we're back to square one. You got to eat. You got to drink. You got to have medical supplies. You got to have electricity of some sort. You got to have support groups. You got to have your own teams, just like I do, and because I stand by this comment. We're going to go to bed one night, and we're going to wake up in a whole different world.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm afraid you're right, and this is why I tell people: food, water, guns, ammo, gold for the aftermath. You need to have alliances with neighbors because you can't go it on your own. These are the essentials. There's other things you need to look at too. I mean, if this is protracted, you need to start looking at natural health care products to take the place of your prescription medications you're not going to get. I wrote an article on the Common Sense Show a few days ago called 17 Things that you need to have prior to the Civil War. And I would encourage people to go up there and take a look at that. It's not an exhaustive checklist, but it is a checklist. And people need to get ready. And I mean yesterday you need to get ready. And I don't think people can get fully prepared if they're starting at ground zero right now, Paul, but something is better than nothing.
Oh, absolutely. I started 5 years ago. But yeah, absolutely. And anybody in the cities have an escape route. Dave and I will try to keep you as up to speed as we can. If you've got family out in the country, get ready to get out of town. If you're in the cities, have bug-in bags where you can, 30, 60, 90 days, food, water, and prepare to bug in because you're going to have any other choice. But I mean, this is the most dangerous time in the history of the world, Dave.
Oh, no question. Not just America, the world. I think we've got the right guy taking office. I think he has some ability to turn some of this back, but I agree with the statement of Paul Craig Roberts. I mean, there's a lot of things that Trump isn't going to be able to fix instantly on the first day, and those things could be used against the American people, and I think we've talked about some of them here tonight. Paul Martin from revolutionradio.org. I recommend that you go to his site daily, multiple times daily, as he constantly updates his site with new articles that are timely and important, and you can hear he's a wealth of information, always a frequent guest here for good reason on the Common Sense Show. Paul, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Dave. It's great to be with you.